You're listening to Health Professional Radio. My name is Wayne Bucklar, and today I'm joined by Scott Sheppard. Now, Scott's the Executive General Manager for Queensland and Northern New South Wales at House with No Steps. Scott, welcome to Health Professional Radio.
Thank you, Wayne. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's our pleasure to have you. Now I think because I read House with No Steps that I know what you're about, but I get these things wrong so often. Why don't you tell us what it is you're about and what geographical area you function in?
Yeah, and it's a great question, Wayne, because a lot of people think House with No Steps, do you sell lifts or escalators? Of course we don't. Well, not of course, we don't. We provide supports and services to people with a disability. So a House with No Steps is our name. It's been around for over 60 years, but it's more a metaphor nowadays. So literally, it's about taking away barriers and making sure there's no access issues for people with disabilities in their daily lives. So we're a not-for-profit organisation. We're a human rights-based organisation. And in our eyes, having a disability should never limit the degree of choice and control people have over their own lives. So we work hard through a range of different services to make sure that people we support get a fair go. Now, whether that's a person with an intellectual disability or a physical disability, of course, the service is very different, but the principle is still the same.
Oh, I see. I had the misconception that everyone else has, I have to admit. So you're not concerned about the nature of the disability, but in fact, how to overcome and neutralise that disability where you can.
Absolutely. The principle is the same. You know, human rights for everybody, whether you have an impairment that affects your physical access or your coordination, or whether you have a cognitive impairment that means perhaps that you process information differently, or your brain and cognitive abilities are different, or you've actually acquired a brain injury or an impairment, either say through a stroke or an accident. At the end of the day, we're all equal human beings, and we just all need different types of support to be the best people that we can.
Now, Scott, I'm assuming that you'd be closely involved with the National Disability Insurance Scheme, given that that's the nature that your work is around disability. Is that something you can talk about with us today?
I'd love to, Wayne. For us, the National Disability Insurance Scheme is a game changer. We've been advocating and supporting the NDIS for a good 4 or 5 years, and it's the opportunity to make sure that there's an entitlement-based national scheme in place, so that any person who is born or acquires a disability has a right to the same service no matter where they live. At the moment, we basically have a broken, inadequate system which varies greatly depending on where you live, what state, what locality you live in, and it's a real shame because we know what good intervention, good services, good therapy can mean to a person, and just for the want of either a government policy or some dollars, people have been missing out and doing it extremely tough. So it's an all too familiar story where there perhaps is an elderly couple of parents that are in their 70s. They may have a son or daughter who's 40 to 50 with Down syndrome or cerebral palsy, and they've been caring for that adult child basically all their lives. Mm-hmm. And they've had little support, and maybe they've got a good GP that helps them, some counsel services. But their biggest fear is what happens when I die? What's going to happen to my son or daughter? Where will they live? Who will look after them? And who will look after their best interests? The NDIS is an insurance scheme that is similar to Medicare. So it's actually an economic argument based on insurance actuarials and probabilities rather than just a social welfare scheme. So the Productivity Commission modelled and demonstrated that if you spend some money up front with a child or a young person and a family or a person as they acquire their disability early, you actually, it costs less in the long run to the government. It actually ensures that people are healthier, more productive, and therefore can contribute back to the economy rather than there be this bottomless pit of welfare handouts that have to go to families as they break down, or for people as they lose their employment, or they present at acute health services and emergency departments or in aged care beds as people with a disability who are young, but because they have perhaps a nursing level of care requirement, they're either blocking beds in hospitals or they're taking up beds in aged care facilities. They don't need to be there. They could be living out in the community with the proper support, and that's a lot about what we do. We provide the age-relevant supports that people need so that they can continue to live within a community and hopefully make a worthwhile contribution.
Scott, that's very interesting to hear you explain. I've not heard it explained before in terms of its economic benefits, and that's interesting to hear it expressed that way. Now, a lot of our listeners are clinicians of one kind or another. What's the message you'd like them to hear from you today?
We'd like them to know about the NDIS, most importantly, that there is a scheme that they should know about so that they can make the necessary referrals from within their own services. And also, secondly, about House with No Steps. We have a large geographic footprint across the eastern coast of Australia, from the ACT right across New South Wales and Queensland. We currently support over 3,500 people with disability. We run businesses and we actually employ over 600 people with disabilities. We provide early intervention clinical services in some communities where perhaps the first diagnosis of a disability at birth or at 12 months of age, a family can come with their child and have therapists that understand what it means to provide them the support and perhaps on referrals to other clinicians and help that child develop and reach their milestones, and perhaps as they then go to school, through their school life, perhaps when they're ready to leave school, to find a job and maintain a job, and to provide respite to families, so families who have a child or an adult that can support them with help, but they need a break from time to time, so we can provide that break, whether it's in the community or in the family home. We can also provide training, skill development, supported living, where we can support people 24/7 around the clock, either with high physical support needs or more behavioural and facilitation and guidance type support. So what House with No Steps does, we work locally with local clinicians and communities. We make the right connections so that people can get the sort of supports that they need. And we've been in the Hunter region in New South Wales and now in the ACT. We've been part of the NDIS rollout for over 2 years. We're seeing great results. People are actually getting packages and additional support that they need. They're actually having more choice and control over those supports. And now we're pretty excited in Queensland. We've actually got the rollout in Townsville as the early launch site for Queensland of the NDIS. So we've got our first NDIS customers in Townsville, and we're looking over the next couple of years to progressively roll out more NDIS services right throughout Queensland.
Scott, it's a fascinating initiative, and it will be interesting to see it rolled out. For people who are looking for more information and looking to contact you, how can they get in touch with you?
We have a 1300 Let's Go customer inquiry line, so that's 1300 Let's Go, or for those who prefer the old numerical number, 1300 538 746. We have a customer service person there that will be able to take people's inquiries and point them in the right direction. And we also have our website, which is hwns.com.au, and there's a whole raft of information available to people on our website, either about ourselves or about the NDIS.
Scott Sheppard, Executive General Manager, Queensland and Northern New South Wales at House with No Steps. It's been a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you for giving up some time to talk to us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having us, Wayne.
If you just missed my conversation with Scott, the good news is we have a transcript on our website. We also have an audio archive on both YouTube and SoundCloud, and you can get access to all of those at the Health Professional Radio website, www.hpr.fm. If you missed that website for House with No Steps, it was www.hwns.com.au. This is Health Professional Radio, and you're listening to Wayne Bucklar. Thank you for spending your time with us today.